Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered what it would take to completely transform yourself, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and in how others perceive you? What if I told you that in just 21 days you could become virtually unrecognizable to those who think they know you? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about human nature. Our potential for radical self-transformation is vastly underestimated. They knew that with discipline, emotional control, and strategic thinking, anyone could reshape themselves into something formidable. This isn't about superficial change, it's about fundamental rewiring. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." While this might seem cold at first glance, there's a deeper wisdom here that few are willing to explore. It speaks to a truth about human dynamics and influence that most people intuitively understand but rarely acknowledge openly. Has this ever happened to you? You find yourself constantly seeking approval, bending to others' expectations, and ultimately feeling powerless in your own life. The principles I'm about to share might be exactly what you've been searching for. The intersection of dark psychology, stoic resilience, and disciplined action creates a potent framework for personal evolution. This isn't about manipulating others. It's about understanding human nature so deeply that you can navigate social waters with unprecedented clarity and purpose. What makes this 21-day transformation different is its foundation in psychological principles that have stood the test of time. From the courts of Renaissance Italy to the training grounds of elite military units, these concepts have shaped history's most influential figures. Stay with me until the end, because what distinguishes those who actually transform from those who merely wish for change is the willingness to embrace uncomfortable truths. The journey I'm about to outline isn't for everyone. It requires confronting aspects of yourself and human nature that most prefer to ignore. Imagine walking into a room and commanding attention without saying a word. Picture making decisions from a place of strategic clarity rather than emotional reactivity. Envision building a life where you're no longer blown about by others' opinions and expectations. The recipe for this transformation combines ancient wisdom with cutting-edge psychological insights. It requires dismantling old patterns while simultaneously building new ones. And unlike most personal development approaches, it doesn't shy away from the darker aspects of human nature and influence. What you're about to discover might surprise you, challenge you, and possibly even disturb you at times. But for those willing to walk this path, the rewards extend far beyond what most believe possible in just 21 days. If you are ready to kill the old version of yourself and rise as someone untouchable, don't just watch, join the Brotherhood. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. This is not entertainment, this is initiation. The incredible thing about this 21-day identity evolution is that it requires you to operate in a completely different paradigm. You're not just making small adjustments, you're engaging in a fundamental transformation of how you see yourself at the core level. When I talk about declaring evolution over comfort, I'm addressing one of the hidden truths about personal development that few are willing to acknowledge. Real growth happens only when you're willing to feel uncomfortable. This discomfort isn't something to avoid. It's actually the compass pointing toward your evolution. Consider how often we make decisions based primarily on what feels safe, rather than what might lead to breakthrough. This war strategy I'm describing isn't about fighting others. It's about battling the internal resistance that keeps you locked in patterns that no longer serve you. The most fascinating revelation in this process is watching how your mind will create elaborate scenarios to keep you in your comfort zone. It will rationalize, negotiate, and even sabotage your efforts, all to maintain the status quo. This is because your current identity, the one shaped by external expectations and past experiences, fights for its survival, even when it's holding you back. Behind the scenes of every successful transformation is this crucial understanding. Your old identity wasn't entirely chosen by you. Much of it was assembled from other people's expectations, societal norms, and adaptations you made to fit in or survive difficult circumstances. The journey ahead requires acknowledging this truth without judgment. What makes the 21-day framework so powerful is that it honors the neurological reality of habit formation while providing enough time to push through the initial resistance. The first week is almost always the hardest. This is when your old identity fights back with everything it has. This is when most people give up, mistaking this resistance as a sign they're on the wrong path, when it's actually evidence they're precisely where they need to be. I've guided thousands through this process, and the pattern is remarkably consistent. Days 3 to 5 are typically when the strongest internal backlash occurs. The mind creates reasons why now isn't the right time, or maybe this isn't for me. But those who push through this threshold discover something remarkable on the other side, a sense of agency and personal power that was previously inaccessible. Now, I want to go even deeper into the specific mechanics of how this transformation actually works in your brain, and what happens when you begin deliberately reconstructing your identity rather than accepting the one you've inherited. The neurological implications are fascinating and explain why so many traditional approaches to change ultimately fail. If you're resonating with this message about breaking free from your comfort zone to evolve into something greater, write "ready for war" in the comments below. I'm curious how many of you are prepared to take on this journey of transformation. The real transformation happens when you realize that identity isn't this unmovable mountain, but more like clay in your hands. Most people walk around with this rigid sense of self. This is who I am, take it or leave it. But the reality, your identity is the most powerful tool in your arsenal for navigating life's complexities. Think about it. We're constantly shape-shifting throughout our day anyway. You're one person with your boss, another with your partner, and someone else entirely when you're alone. This isn't being fake, it's being adaptable. The problem comes when we convince ourselves that only one version is the real me, and everything else is somehow inauthentic. What I've discovered through my own journey is that when you consciously redesign your identity, you're not being dishonest. You're actually being strategic with your most valuable resource, yourself. This mindset shift allows you to stop being a prisoner of other people's perceptions. The weak will keep scrolling. The strong will take action. Subscribe to this channel right now, lock in your commitment, and begin the 21-day transformation that will make you unrecognizable. This brings us to what I call psychological assassination. And no, it's not as violent as it sounds. It's about deliberately breaking the expectations others have built around you. We all get placed in boxes: the responsible one, the funny friend, the cautious colleague. These boxes become prisons when others react with confusion or even hostility when you step outside them. The hidden truth is that most people aren't actually reacting to you. They're reacting to the disruption of their mental model of you. When you suddenly show confidence where you once showed insecurity, or ambition where you once showed complacency, it forces them to recalibrate. That recalibration is uncomfortable for them, which is why they often try to push you back into your assigned box. I remember when I first started asserting myself in professional settings after years of being the agreeable one. The resistance was immediate. Colleagues would say things like, "That's not like you," or "Are you feeling okay?" They weren't concerned about my well-being. They were concerned about the collapse of their predictable world. The revelation here is that allowing this psychological assassination to happen, letting others' outdated versions of you die, is absolutely necessary for growth. It's not your job to maintain everyone's comfortable illusion of who you are. Your only responsibility is to become the person you need to be for your own evolution. Now I want to go even deeper into this concept by exploring how identity flexibility becomes your greatest superpower in both personal and professional contexts. The ability to consciously shift between different aspects of yourself isn't just about breaking free. It's about strategically choosing which version of yourself is most effective in any given situation. If you're resonating with these ideas about breaking free from identity constraints, write in the comments, "I'm ready to assassinate my old self." Here's why this approach is so powerful. When you deliberately transform your interactions into battlefields for practicing your new identity, you're essentially creating a laboratory for personal evolution. Each conversation, each meeting, each text message becomes an opportunity to embody who you're becoming rather than who you've been. The 21-day framework isn't arbitrary either. It's the sweet spot where consistent practice begins to solidify into natural behavior. But let's address something that most personal development experts won't tell you. This process is meant to be uncomfortable. That discomfort is the signal that transformation is happening. When you feel that resistance, that awkwardness of trying on a new way of being, you're at the edge of your comfort zone, exactly where growth occurs. The journey requires courage to push through moments when you'll desperately want to retreat to your familiar patterns. The disappearance component might seem counterintuitive in our hyper-connected world. We're taught that constant availability equals productivity and responsibility. Yet, true discipline often manifests as strategic withdrawal. It's about creating sacred spaces where your focus can deepen without the constant intrusion of notifications, opinions, and expectations. In these deliberate absences, you gain something invaluable: the mental clarity to distinguish between who you are and who you've been conditioned to be. I've witnessed remarkable revelations emerge during these periods of intentional seclusion. One client, a high-performing executive, discovered that her decision-making had been primarily driven by anticipated approval rather than genuine conviction. This insight only surfaced when she stepped back from her usual environment, a pattern I've seen repeated countless times. The truth is, we often mistake adaptation for authenticity. We become so skilled at meeting external expectations that we lose touch with our internal compass. This disappearance practice creates the necessary conditions for recalibration, allowing you to assess which aspects of your identity are authentic expressions and which are merely adaptive responses. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how these identity shifts manifest physiologically. Your brain quite literally reorganizes neural pathways during this process, creating new connections that support your emerging identity. This isn't just psychological, it's biological transformation occurring at the cellular level. When you consistently practice your new identity across different contexts, you're essentially training your nervous system to recognize this way of being as your baseline rather than as a performance. The initial discomfort gradually gives way to a sense of alignment that feels like coming home to yourself, perhaps for the first time. If this concept of strategic withdrawal resonates with your experience, write "conscious disappearance" in the comments below. I'm curious how many of you have already intuitively recognized the power of this practice in your own lives. When we remove ourselves from spaces where we're undervalued, silence becomes a powerful message that requires no words. This withdrawal isn't about punishment, it's about personal boundaries and self-respect. The space you create through distance allows for remarkable personal transformation that simply can't happen when you're constantly accessible to those who drain your energy. Think about what happens in nature when an animal retreats to heal. They don't announce their pain or recovery journey. They simply disappear until they're strong again. This natural wisdom applies to our human relationships too. By stepping back, you're creating the necessary conditions for your own evolution. What's fascinating is how this withdrawal often triggers a revelation in others. When you're constantly available, people rarely pause to consider your value. Your absence creates a void that forces reflection. I've witnessed countless stories where someone's deliberate retreat became the turning point that completely shifted the power dynamic in a relationship that had become unbalanced. The journey of strategic withdrawal requires inner strength most people don't realize they possess. We're conditioned to believe that constant connection equals relevance, but the hidden truth is that your power often multiplies in absence. This isn't manipulation, it's simply understanding human psychology and applying it with integrity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring what happens behind the scenes during this period of silence. There's an internal alchemy that occurs when you redirect the energy you were giving to others back toward yourself. The space you create becomes fertile ground for rediscovering parts of yourself that were neglected during periods of overgiving. Consider how differently people approach those who maintain healthy boundaries versus those who are perpetually available. There's an unconscious respect that develops for individuals who clearly value themselves. This respect isn't demanded. It's a natural response to someone who has established their worth through actions rather than words. The impact of strategic withdrawal extends far beyond the immediate relationship dynamics. It ripples through every aspect of your life, enhancing your decision-making, strengthening your sense of self, and attracting different types of connections. When you stop accepting less than you deserve in one area, you naturally begin upgrading your standards everywhere else. If you're nodding along to this and it resonates with your own experiences, write "boundaries equal respect" in the comments below. This unreadability becomes your secret advantage in daily interactions. Think about it. When someone can't predict your reactions, they can't manipulate your emotions. This isn't about becoming emotionless, but rather achieving a level of emotional sovereignty that transforms how you navigate life's challenges. What's fascinating is how this emotional stability creates a ripple effect in your relationships. People naturally gravitate toward those who maintain composure under pressure. It's a primal response. We instinctively seek safety in the eye of the storm. By developing this skill, you become that calm center that others rely on. The hidden truth of cold psychology is that it's actually a practice of deep self-awareness. To control your external reactions, you must first understand your internal triggers. This journey of self-discovery reveals patterns and vulnerabilities you might never have noticed otherwise. You'll start recognizing when someone is pushing your buttons before you even feel the emotional surge. I've seen remarkable transformations in people who cultivate this skill. One client described it as finally feeling like I'm driving my own car, instead of being a passenger in my life. This shift in perspective changes everything, from how you handle criticism to how you negotiate important decisions. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the practical applications of emotional control. In daily interactions, this skill becomes your invisible shield. Imagine being in a heated argument and maintaining perfect clarity while others become increasingly emotional. This doesn't just protect you, it gives you the unique ability to de-escalate situations that might otherwise spiral out of control. The ability to remain calm under pressure also enhances your decision-making capacity exponentially. When emotions cloud judgment, mistakes multiply. By separating urgent feelings from important choices, you create space for wisdom to emerge. This doesn't mean ignoring your emotions, quite the opposite. You acknowledge them fully, but you don't allow them to hijack your behavior. What's particularly powerful about mastering cold psychology is how it reveals the hidden dynamics in conversations. You'll start noticing subtle attempts at emotional manipulation that previously would have slipped past your awareness. These revelations transform how you engage with others, allowing you to respond strategically rather than reactively. If what I'm saying resonates with your experiences, write emotional sovereignty in the comments below. Now, let's examine how this approach can be applied to specific high-stakes situations. A strategic and deliberate approach in reactions can increase your perceived power. Think about it. Whenever you immediately react to something, you're essentially revealing your hand. It's like playing poker and showing everyone your cards before the bet. What we fail to realize is that in these spontaneous moments, we surrender our power to the situation rather than maintaining control. I want to go even deeper into this transformative process. When you intentionally pause before responding, you create a window of opportunity, a moment where you can assess not just what's happening, but the entire landscape of possibilities. This isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about reclaiming your personal sovereignty in every interaction. The 21-day journey to shift from reflexive reactions to calculated responses isn't arbitrary. Neuroscience shows us that creating new neural pathways requires consistent practice. When you deliberately pause before responding to provocations, criticisms, or even compliments, you're literally rewiring your brain's default settings. The hidden truth here is that most people live their entire lives without ever questioning their automatic response patterns. Consider the impact this has on your relationships and career. People who master the art of the strategic pause are often perceived as more trustworthy, level-headed, and yes, more powerful. They create an aura of mystery and depth that naturally draws others in. I've witnessed countless behind-the-scenes revelations where individuals completely transformed their professional standing simply by mastering this single skill. What makes this approach particularly effective is that it operates beneath conscious awareness. Most people can't quite put their finger on why they feel someone has presence or authority, but often it's this very quality of measured response that creates that impression. Your deliberate reactions become a signal that you're navigating life from a position of choice rather than compulsion. The beauty in this practice is its simplicity. You don't need special tools or techniques, just awareness and a commitment to that brief moment of pause. Start with low-stakes situations. A text message that annoys you, a colleague's comment in a meeting, or even good news that excites you. Practice the pause, assess your options, and then choose your response. With each repetition, you're building a new mindset that will serve you in more challenging scenarios. If what I'm saying resonates with your experiences, type "I choose my responses" in the comments section. Now let me share how this principle becomes even more powerful when applied strategically in specific situations. The most important lesson in all this is that history doesn't remember your intentions. It only remembers your results. Look at any major historical figure who achieved remarkable things, whether in business, politics, or war. Do we primarily judge them by how nice they were, by their ethical struggles? Rarely. We judge them by what they actually accomplished. This isn't about becoming some cartoonish villain. It's about recognizing that impact requires difficult decisions that won't make everyone happy. When you choose a direction worth pursuing, you must be willing to deal with the obstacles, even when those obstacles come in human form. I witnessed this transformation firsthand with a client who ran a failing family business. For years, he kept underperforming relatives on payroll out of loyalty, watching his company slowly sink. The turning point came when he finally made the ruthless decision to replace 3 family members with qualified professionals. The business turned around within 6 months, and interestingly, his relationship with those relatives eventually improved once they found careers better suited to their abilities. His temporary cruelty created better outcomes for everyone. This reveals the hidden paradox of strategic ruthlessness. Sometimes the kindest long-term action requires short-term discomfort, like a surgeon who must cause pain to heal, or a parent who sets boundaries that make a child cry. Meaningful leadership involves making decisions that won't win you immediate popularity contests. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic by addressing the internal journey required to develop this capacity, because make no mistake, this isn't just about external actions. It's about developing the psychological fortitude to withstand disapproval when you know your decisions are sound. The most common barrier I see is what I call approval addiction, that deep-seated need to be liked that keeps many talented people from making necessary decisions. Breaking free from this pattern requires recognizing that temporary disapproval is simply the price of meaningful impact. Every transformative leader throughout history has faced periods of intense criticism. It's not a bug in the system, it's a feature. Consider how this might apply in your own situation. What decisions have you been avoiding because you fear how others might react? What necessary conversations are you postponing? What boundaries need to be established that you've been hesitating to draw? These questions reveal where your own capacity for strategic ruthlessness needs development. If any of these scenarios feel familiar to your own experience, write "I recognize this pattern" in the comments below. I'm curious how many of you are noticing similar challenges in your leadership journey. Speaking of this hidden decision-making approach, there's an extraordinary transformation that happens when you make clarity your foundation. Most people wait for confidence before acting, but here's the reality. Confidence follows clarity, not the other way around. When you're crystal clear about what you want, even the smallest actions carry tremendous weight. I've seen this unfold countless times behind the scenes with successful people. They aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They simply operate with a level of clarity that makes their decisions almost automatic. It's like they've eliminated the friction that holds most people back. Think about the last time you felt stuck. Was it really a lack of resources or knowledge that held you back? Or was it the fog of uncertainty clouding your judgment? That fog is what keeps us in a perpetual state of almost starting or partially committed. It's the invisible barrier between where you are and where you want to be. The journey toward decisiveness isn't about becoming cold or calculating. It's about creating such clarity in your mind that the path forward becomes obvious, almost inevitable. Your decisions gain a quiet power that doesn't need to announce itself through aggressive behavior or dramatic gestures. What makes this approach so effective is its subtlety. While others are loudly proclaiming their ambitions, you're quietly laying foundations. While they're debating their next move, your clarity has already guided you 3 steps ahead. This is the hidden truth behind meaningful progress. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. I'm reminded of a revelation that changed my perspective entirely. Decision fatigue is real, but it affects the unclear mind most severely. When you operate from a place of absolute clarity, many decisions become automatic, preserving your mental energy for truly important choices. Your mind becomes a more efficient instrument, capable of discerning signal from noise without exhausting itself. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this clarity-first mindset creates a compound effect over time. The impact of making aligned decisions consistently, even when they seem insignificant in the moment, creates momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. If what I'm sharing resonates with your own experience, type "clarity first" in the comments below. I'm curious to know how many of you have discovered this principle in your own journey. Dark psychology examines how people respond to perceived strength versus weakness. While we may intellectually value vulnerability, there's a primal aspect of human nature that respects power and control. Think about how we instinctively gravitate toward those who appear unshakable in their convictions. The untouchable individual has mastered this dynamic through what I call presence projection. They've cultivated an aura that communicates absolute certainty in their actions. This isn't about domination, but rather about the subtle art of psychological positioning. When someone approaches life with unwavering conviction, others naturally recalibrate their expectations and behavior. Consider the transformation that occurs when you stop seeking approval and instead operate from a place of self-contained authority. The journey toward becoming untouchable begins with this fundamental mindset shift. Understanding that your power doesn't come from external validation, but from internal certainty. I've observed this phenomenon across various contexts, from boardrooms to social gatherings. The person who apologizes profusely for taking up space is treated differently than the one who moves through the world with quiet confidence. It's not that the untouchable never makes mistakes. They simply don't allow those mistakes to diminish their sense of self-worth. Behind the scenes of every interaction lies this hidden truth. Humans are constantly scanning for hierarchical cues. The untouchable has mastered the art of projecting strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance. They understand that true power doesn't require announcement, it simply exists. This revelation can be unsettling because it challenges our conventional narratives about human connection. We want to believe that authenticity alone is enough, but the psychological reality is more complex. The untouchable individual recognizes this complexity and works with it rather than against it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how this principle manifests in everyday scenarios. The untouchable has developed a particular way of handling criticism, navigating social boundaries, and maintaining their center during chaos. These practical applications show us how this concept extends beyond theory into actionable wisdom. If this perspective is shifting something in your understanding, write in the comments, "I see the matrix now." I'm curious how many of you have already recognized this pattern playing out in your own experiences. And here's what most people miss about this aura of influence. It's not just what you do, it's who you become. When you develop a commanding presence, you're not putting on an act, you're allowing your authentic power to emerge. I've seen transformation happen for people when they finally understand this deeper truth. Think about the spaces you enter each day. In meetings, social gatherings, or even family dinners, energy transfers happen constantly. Your presence either diminishes or expands in these spaces. The difference between those who command attention and those who fade into the background often comes down to intentional presence. Let me share something that changed everything for my approach. Stillness isn't weakness, it's calculated power. When everyone else is fidgeting, moving, or filling silence with nervous chatter, the person who stands comfortably still becomes the gravitational center of the room. This is the hidden mechanics of presence. The journey to developing this influence isn't overnight. It requires consistent, deliberate practice. Start by becoming aware of your physical habits. Do you constantly shift weight from foot to foot? Do your hands search for occupation? These micro movements telegraph uncertainty to others on a subconscious level. Your voice is another critical element of your presence. When you speak at a slightly slower pace than those around you, you're signaling to everyone's subconscious that your words carry weight. Notice how the most influential people you know rarely rush their speech. They understand the power of measured delivery. I've witnessed the profound impact this approach can have. One client, a brilliant but overlooked middle manager, transformed her career trajectory simply by mastering these presence fundamentals. Within 3 months, she was being included in executive meetings and her ideas were finally getting the recognition they deserved. The revelations continue when you understand that commanding presence isn't about dominating others. It's about creating a space where your authentic self can be fully expressed and received. This shifts the entire dynamic from manipulation to genuine connection. Now, I want to go even deeper into how this presence affects the decision-making parts of others' brains and how you can ethically harness this. Understanding in your daily interactions. If you're recognizing these patterns in your own life or work, write "presence activated" in the comments below. This mysterious quality, this aura, is actually something that can be developed intentionally. When you speak less but with purpose, you're creating what psychologists call information asymmetry. You know more than you reveal, which naturally puts you in a position of power. It's not about manipulation, it's about understanding the impact of restraint. Consider how the greatest leaders throughout history have used measured speech and deliberate silence. Their words carried weight precisely because they were scarce. In our hyper-connected world, where everyone is constantly sharing every thought, the person who creates space around their words stands apart. This is why the quiet, thoughtful types often command more respect in boardrooms than the constant talkers. But the journey to developing this powerful presence goes beyond just speaking less. It requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to yourself. When you stop seeking external validation and instead cultivate a deep internal certainty, something transformative happens. Your need to explain yourself diminishes. Your desire to fill silences fades. You become comfortable with the unknown spaces between words. The hidden truth about presence is that it begins with how you stand in relation to your own thoughts. Most people are constantly negotiating with themselves, questioning, doubting, reviewing. This internal noise inevitably leaks into how they present themselves to others. But when you develop rock-solid self-trust, that noise quiets down. In the absence of that noise, your presence naturally expands. I've observed this phenomenon in my own journey too. Years ago, I would enter rooms filled with anxiety about how I was being perceived. This anxiety led me to overcompensate, talking too much, explaining too thoroughly, trying desperately to be understood. The irony is that the more I tried to be impressive, the less impressive I became. My revelation came when I realized that true confidence isn't loud at all. It's actually quite still. Now let's get practical about developing this quality. Start with becoming intimately aware of your impulses, particularly the impulse to fill silence or to explain yourself. When you feel that familiar urge rising, simply notice it without judgment. This awareness alone will begin to transform how you show up. Practice being comfortable with pauses in conversation. Most people rush to fill these gaps, but the person with presence uses them deliberately. A thoughtful pause before responding signals to others that you're actually considering what was said, not just waiting for your turn to speak. This simple shift in conversation dynamics changes how people experience you. The mindset behind this practice is crucial. You're not creating an aura to manipulate or intimidate others. Rather, you're removing the noise and clutter that prevents your natural presence from emerging. It's more about subtraction than addition, taking away the unnecessary rather than adding something artificial. If this resonates with your own experience, write presence over performance in the comments. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical steps you can take to build this quality. This transformation process is truly fascinating when you look beneath the surface. Shedding. Your old self isn't just about changing habits or routines. It's a complete metamorphosis where you must be willing to let go of everything that no longer serves your evolution. Think about how a snake sheds its skin completely. It doesn't leave patches of old skin clinging to its body. The process is thorough, intentional, and necessary for growth. What many don't realize during their personal journeys is that fragments of your former identity can linger in unexpected places. Perhaps it's in the way you react to criticism, how you handle success, or even in your subconscious beliefs about what you deserve. These fragments are resilient, waiting for moments of weakness to reassert themselves and pull you back to familiar territory. The hidden truth here is that transformation isn't a single decision, but rather thousands of micro-decisions made daily to move forward instead of backward. When I talk about burning old ties, I'm addressing one of the most challenging aspects of personal evolution. These ties aren't just about relationships, though that's part of it. They're about emotional attachments to past versions of yourself, to comfort zones that no longer fit who you're becoming. The revelation that changed everything for me was understanding that necessary losses aren't failures, they're liberations. Behind the scenes of every significant life change is this dance with discomfort. You must be willing to stand in the fire of uncertainty, to feel the heat of doubt and veer without retreating to the familiar. It's in this space, this uncomfortable middle ground between who you were and who you're becoming, where the real transformation occurs. Now, I want to go even deeper into this psychological process. Many people misunderstand the nature of resistance during transformation. What feels like external obstacles are often internal mechanisms designed to protect you from change. Your mind creates elaborate scenarios and rationalizations to keep you safe in familiar territory. But this safety is an illusion that prevents the breakthrough you're seeking. Embracing necessary losses means developing a new relationship with discomfort. It means recognizing that the initial pain of letting go creates space for something more aligned with your true potential. This isn't about reckless abandonment of everything in your life. It's about conscious curation of what remains. If any of this resonates with your own experience of transformation, write shedding. My skin in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not alone in this journey of continuous becoming. The process of shedding your old identity is both liberating and terrifying. Think about it. We're essentially asking you to let go of everything you've known about yourself up to this point. That's why most people resist change so fiercely. They'd rather cling to a familiar pain than step into an unfamiliar potential. When I turned off my phone for that first week of transformation, the withdrawal was physical. My hand would unconsciously reach for the device that wasn't there. My mind would generate phantom notifications. But in that digital silence, I began to hear my own thoughts again, not the thoughts programmed by constant input from others. The same happens with toxic relationships. These connections aren't just unpleasant, they're actively reinforcing your old identity. Every interaction is a subtle reminder. This is who you are. This is your place. Stay here. Breaking away isn't being cruel to others. It's being kind to yourself. It's creating the space your new self needs to breathe. Comfort is perhaps the most deceptive leash of all. We've been culturally conditioned to pursue comfort as the ultimate goal. But what if comfort is actually the enemy of growth? Every significant transformation in human history happened at the edge of discomfort. The revelation here is that being uncomfortable isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often the clearest indicator you're finally doing something right. The journey toward your authentic self requires sacrifice. I've seen people abandon six-figure jobs because they realized they had built careers that served their old identities. I've watched others move across the country, end decades-long relationships, or completely reimagine their physical appearance, not as acts of running away, but as deliberate steps toward who they truly are. What makes this process so challenging is the judgment that comes with it. People who are still operating from their limited identities will project their fears onto your transformation. They'll call it selfish, impulsive, or irresponsible. This external resistance is actually a powerful confirmation that you're disrupting the status quo, not just in your life, but in the collective understanding of what's possible. The decision to release your old self isn't something you make once. It's a choice you recommit to every single day, sometimes every hour. Each time you decline an invitation that doesn't serve your growth, each time you speak a truth that makes others uncomfortable, each time you invest in yourself rather than seeking external validation, you're strengthening the foundation of your new identity. Now, I want to go even deeper into the practical reality of this transformation and how it manifests in your daily choices, your environment, and even your physical body. If you're resonating with these ideas, write in the comments, "I'm ready to outgrow." This exchange of immediate comfort for future freedom is at the core of any meaningful transformation. When we avoid pain, we're actually postponing our liberation. I've seen this pattern repeat countless times in my own journey. The things I resisted facing became the very barriers to my growth. The ancient Stoics understood this principle deeply. They practiced voluntary discomfort not because they enjoyed suffering, but because they recognized its transformative power. When you deliberately step into challenging situations, whether it's cold showers, difficult conversations, or facing your deepest fears, you're essentially saying, "I choose temporary discomfort for lasting liberation." This alchemical process rewires not just your actions, but your entire identity. Think about it. The person who wakes up at 5 a.m. consistently isn't just performing an action. They're becoming someone who values discipline over momentary pleasure. The hidden truth here is that your capacity for enduring necessary pain directly correlates with your potential for personal evolution. I've found that the most powerful transformation happens when we stop viewing discomfort as something to avoid and instead see it as the furnace that forges our future self. Each moment of resistance you push through literally reconfigures your neural pathways. The science behind this is fascinating. Neuroplasticity demonstrates how deliberate discomfort creates new mental architectures that eventually make difficult choices easier. Behind every significant breakthrough in human history, there's been this same principle at work. Edison's thousands of failed attempts, Olympic athletes' grueling training regimens, entrepreneurs facing rejection after rejection. They all understood that the path to extraordinary results demands extraordinary resilience. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle of self-forging applies specifically to building genuine confidence. When you consistently take small, uncomfortable actions aligned with your values, you're accumulating evidence that you can trust yourself. This self-trust is the foundation upon which authentic confidence is built. Not the fragile ego kind that needs constant external validation, but the grounded certainty that comes from proving yourself to yourself. The journey of transformation isn't linear, though. It's more like a spiral, where you revisit similar challenges but at higher levels of awareness. What devastated you 2 years ago might barely register now. This is the evidence of your expanding capacity, the revelation that you've been strengthening your psychological immune system through deliberate exposure to difficulty. If you're nodding along to these ideas and they're resonating with your own experience, write "Pain is my teacher" in the comments below. I'd love to hear how this principle has played out in your own life. Every severed tie acts as a grave marker for the previous constraints on your identity. In 21 days, people will see only the transformed version who commands respect rather than seeks approval. This metamorphosis isn't arbitrary. It's rooted in cognitive rewiring that happens when you remove yourself from toxic dynamics. The human mind craves homeostasis, making us instinctively resist change even when it's beneficial. But when you consciously step away from these relationships, you create a necessary void that triggers adaptive responses in your brain. The journey through this void can feel disorienting at first. You might experience what psychologists call identity diffusion, a temporary state where your sense of self becomes fluid. This isn't weakness. It's actually the foundation of your strength. This diffusion allows you to reconstruct your identity outside the distorted mirror of others' expectations. What's fascinating is how this transformation manifests physically. Research in psychoneuroimmunology shows that emotional boundaries literally strengthen your immune system. When you're no longer absorbing others' negative emotions, your body redirects that energy toward healing and renovation. Your posture changes. Your voice finds its natural resonance. Even your sleep patterns improve because you're no longer processing relationship stress during crucial REM cycles. This revelation often comes as a surprise. Many who master healthy detachment discover latent talents and interests that were previously suppressed. It's as though your authentic self was waiting beneath layers of accommodation and people-pleasing behaviors. The 21-day time frame isn't just motivational, it reflects the neurological reality of habit formation. Studies show that consistent behavior over this period creates new neural pathways that begin to feel natural. You're literally rewiring your brain's default settings when you maintain boundaries consistently. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining what happens in the space between cutting ties and full transformation. This interim period holds the most potent opportunities for growth, but it's also where most people retreat back to familiar patterns. Understanding the psychology of this threshold space is crucial for permanently stepping into your authentic power. The most revealing aspect of this journey is how it fundamentally alters your decision-making process. When you're entangled in toxic connections, decisions become contaminated by considerations of how others will react. Breaking free allows you to access your internal compass, the one that's been speaking to you all along, buried beneath the noise of external validation. If you recognize this pattern in your own life, the way you've made decisions based on others' approval rather than your inner wisdom, write "Reclaiming My Compass" in the comments below. The journey of transformation that we're exploring goes beyond mere surface-level changes. It enters the realm of strategic foresight, the ability to anticipate moves before they happen, like a chess grandmaster who sees 5 steps ahead while others are still deciding their opening gambit. What's fascinating is how this evolution creates a profound shift in your energetic signature. People who master this presence develop what I call stoic endurance, the capacity to remain centered during chaos when everyone else is scattered. It's not that you don't feel the pressure, it's that you've trained yourself to process it differently, converting what would overwhelm others into fuel for clarity. The aura-based leadership I mentioned earlier manifests in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Your voice naturally slows down, eliminating those nervous fillers and rushed explanations that betray insecurity. There's a measured cadence to how you deliver even ordinary sentences that commands attention without demanding it. This isn't something you can fake. People have remarkable internal radars for detecting authenticity. The hidden truth behind this work is that you're not becoming someone new as much as you're removing the accumulated layers that have obscured your natural presence. Think about how children command attention effortlessly before they're taught to make themselves small. That original confidence is still within you, waiting to be reclaimed. I've witnessed remarkable revelations during this journey with clients. One executive I worked with described it as finally feeling like I'm wearing clothes that fit after years of borrowing someone else's wardrobe. The persona he'd been projecting was exhausting him because it required constant maintenance. His true presence, once uncovered, required no effort to sustain. The impact extends well beyond professional settings. When you embody this authentic presence, relationships transform because people respond to who you actually are, rather than who you're pretending to be. The decisions you make become clearer because they're aligned with your core rather than with expectations you've internalized. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring the specific mindset shifts that make this transformation possible. There are practical steps that create the foundation for this work, and they often challenge conventional wisdom about confidence and presence. The most powerful revelations often come from questioning assumptions we've never thought to examine. If what I'm describing resonates with your own experience, that sense of knowing there's a more authentic way of showing up in the world, write "reclaiming my presence" in the comments below. Internally, feelings of anxiety and insecurity dissipate through indifference rather than perfection. Unrecognizable transformation is made concrete by exerting choice over what impacts you. It's a profound revelation that many overlook in their journey toward personal sovereignty. When you fully grasp this concept, you'll notice how the constant search for perfection actually feeds your anxieties rather than eliminating them. Think about it. How many times have you tried to perfect something only to feel more anxious about potential flaws? The secret lies in developing selective indifference, not apathy toward everything, but a deliberate choice about what deserves your emotional energy. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight, but it creates ripples that transform your entire experience of reality. What's fascinating is how this principle applies universally. Whether in relationships, work projects, or creative endeavors, the freedom comes not from controlling everything perfectly, but from choosing what truly matters. The hidden truth here is that your power doesn't come from your ability to influence external circumstances, but from your internal decision-making about what affects you. I discovered this during a particularly challenging period in my life, when I was consumed by others' opinions. The breakthrough came when I realized I was voluntarily giving away my power. The moment I started practicing selective indifference, caring deeply about my values while releasing attachment to others' judgments, a remarkable transformation began. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by exploring how this principle affects your neural pathways. Your brain physically restructures when you consistently practice selective indifference. Those anxious thought patterns that once seemed hardwired begin to dissolve as you create new neural connections. Scientists call this neuroplasticity, but I call it freedom architecture. You're literally rebuilding your mind's response system. The most powerful aspect is that this isn't just philosophical theory, it's practical psychology with tangible results. When you stop giving unlimited access to your emotional responses, you reclaim enormous amounts of mental energy. This reclaimed energy becomes available for what truly matters to you. It's like discovering you've been powering your neighbor's house for years and finally redirecting that electricity back to your own home. What makes this journey so transformative is that it's entirely internal. The external circumstances might remain unchanged, but your relationship to them shifts dramatically. This is why two people can experience the identical situation yet have completely different emotional responses. One feels victimized, while another feels empowered, not because the situation differs, but because their internal sovereignty does. If you're finding clarity in what I'm sharing, write "sovereign mind" in the comments. I'd love to know who's connecting with these ideas. Even post-transformation, vigilance is needed to maintain the new, disciplined state. These changes aren't merely surface-level adjustments. They represent a fundamental rewiring of your daily existence. This journey of discipline becomes part of your identity, a silent strength that forms the backbone of everything you do. The power of this transformation lies in its sustainability. Unlike the fleeting excitement of New Year's resolutions, proper discipline integration creates a foundation that withstands life's inevitable storms. You'll notice yourself responding rather than reacting, choosing rather than defaulting, and this subtle shift creates ripples across your entire life experience. What most people miss in their quest for discipline is the necessary internal alignment. When your values, goals, and daily actions exist in harmony, discipline stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like the natural expression of who you are. This revelation changes everything. Suddenly, you're not fighting against yourself, but flowing with your authentic desires. Walking through life involves decisive engagement, self-command, and an aura of control that others notice. People are naturally drawn to those who demonstrate mastery over themselves. There's something magnetic about someone who honors their commitments, especially those made to themselves. This quiet confidence becomes your signature in both personal and professional realms. The hidden truth about sustained discipline is that it eventually creates a form of freedom most people never experience. When your baseline habits align with your highest aspirations, you're liberated from the constant internal negotiation that drains willpower. This liberation creates space for creativity, connection, and genuine presence in your life, qualities that no amount of external success can provide. I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how discipline intersects with your environment. Most people underestimate how powerfully their surroundings affect their ability to maintain disciplined behaviors. Your physical space, social circles, and even digital landscape either reinforce your commitment to discipline or subtly undermine it with each passing day. The journey toward discipline mastery requires periodic recalibration. Life evolves, circumstances change, and your approach to discipline must adapt accordingly. This isn't about rigidity, but rather developing a flexible strength that can withstand life's inevitable plot twists while staying true to your core intentions. What fascinates me most about discipline is how it transcends cultural boundaries and life circumstances. Whether studying historical figures or contemporary success stories, the common thread is always the same: a commitment to ordered living, intentional choices, and consistent action. This universal principle operates regardless of your starting point, creating a level playing field that rewards persistence over privilege. If you're resonating with these ideas about discipline and personal transformation, write in the comments, "I'm claiming my discipline mastery." Now, I want to explore the surprising relationship between discipline and creativity. The transformation demands ruthlessness with precision, declared, and cultivated silently. This journey isn't for those seeking comfort or easy solutions. When we truly commit to reinventing ourselves, we enter a sacred contract with our potential. The shadows that once defined us begin to dissolve, but only through consistent, deliberate practice. Think about the moments when you've felt the shift beginning, that subtle internal alignment when something previously difficult suddenly feels natural. This is the hidden architecture of transformation taking shape beneath your conscious awareness. Your neural pathways are literally being rewired in response to your persistence. What fascinates me about this process is how deeply personal yet universal it remains. The specifics of your journey will differ from mine, but the fundamental mechanics of human evolution follow similar patterns. We resist, we struggle, we adapt, and eventually we embody. This sequence plays out whether you're mastering a skill, changing a habit, or completely reinventing your identity. Consider the power of what psychologists call implementation intentions, specific plans that link situational cues with responses that support your goals. Rather than vague aspirations, these precise decision frameworks act like invisible guardians of your transformation. When you decide in advance exactly how you'll respond when temptation or difficulty arises, you bypass the exhausting internal negotiation that often leads to surrender. The silent cultivation I mentioned earlier? This is where the real alchemy happens. While external accountability has its place, the most profound changes occur in those private moments when no one's watching. The quiet decision to continue when motivation has abandoned you. The internal dialogue that gradually shifts from critic to advocate. These invisible victories accumulate, creating momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. What we're really discussing is the architecture of identity revolution, not simply changing what you do, but fundamentally altering who you are becoming. Your actions are merely symptoms of your identity. Change the core, and the behaviors follow naturally. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining how language shapes reality during transformation. The declarations we make, both to others and ourselves, are not merely descriptive. They're creative forces that establish boundaries and possibilities. When you state with conviction, "I am the kind of person who," you're not just describing a current reality, but invoking a future one. If this concept of identity-based transformation resonates with your experience, write in the comments, "I'm becoming unrecognizable to my former self." I'm curious how many of you are actively engaged in this profound journey of reinvention. The ruthless precision we've discussed isn't about perfection. It's about persistence through imperfection. Those who truly transform understand that the path involves countless invisible decisions that accumulate over time, reshaping who you fundamentally are at your core. What I've found most powerful is that transformation doesn't require public validation to be real. Some of the most significant shifts happen in those private moments when you choose your emerging identity over comfortable patterns. You begin to recognize yourself less in what was familiar and more in what once seemed impossible. If you've stayed with me through this exploration of identity revolution, I believe something in this message was meant for you specifically. The concepts we've covered aren't just theoretical. They're practical blueprints for becoming deliberately different from your past self. If this resonates with you, let me know by commenting, "I'm becoming unrecognizable to my former self." I'd love to hear about your personal journey of reinvention. Consider subscribing if you want to continue these deeper conversations about human transformation. There's fulfillment in connecting with others walking similar paths. I've prepared another video exploring how to maintain momentum when transformation gets uncomfortable. Click right here to continue this journey with me.